Okay, well, hello, everybody. My name is Greg Cooper. I'm a postdoctoral research fellow at the School of Oriental and African Studies. And I'd just quickly like to thank my co-authors and colleagues on the project, also Digital Green, who are our non-governmental organization, partners and facilitators in India, and also our funders, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and UK Aid. So today I want to talk about group model building and its application in North India. The work is still very much ongoing, but I want to kind of present some of the background, some of the types of data we're able to collect with working with participants for model building, also some of the challenges and next steps too. So this work is part of the mini project, the Market Intervention for Nutritional Improvement project, and essentially we're exploring the barriers between agriculture and nutrition in the northern state of India, in Bihar, here outlined in blue. And as some of you will know, there are many barriers in Bihar. On the supply side, there's high seasonality in terms of the types, the qualities, and the quantities of different fruits and vegetables grown. I should say we are interested in the fruits and vegetable value chain. There is then poor infrastructure in terms of the roads and markets and cold storage, which is primarily used for potato. And then the markets itself, kind of the market kind of format is very informal, spot-based negotiations. There's also these networks of commission agents who help to kind of obscure prices, and they have their own margins. And then on the demand side, in Bihar in particular, there is a low demand for fruits and vegetables, a preference for more staple, energy-dense kind of diets. And there's also some concerns about food safety in terms of pesticide and fertilizer usage. And in particular, we're looking at what's called the loop aggregation system, which is an intervention by our partners, Digital Green. And this is a real simplification of the loop, but essentially each loop village has an aggregator, somebody with a pickup truck or a tempo, an auto, and they would aggregate it in the village at the collection point, and then essentially take 4 to 5 to 6 farmers' fruits and vegetables to the market, kind of use collective pooling, collective bargaining, to sometimes be able to negotiate slightly higher prices, share transport costs, and then in the evening they will return the revenues back to the farmers minus the cost of transportation and also the commission agent's commission. And really in the mini project we're interested in these aggregation systems tend to be farmer facing. They tend to be hoping to access new markets, hope to cut transport costs for farmers. We're interested in kind of the implications of these aggregation systems for some of for consumers, particularly in some of the smaller, potentially nutritionally less diverse, poorer markets in Bihar. Is there a tendency for these aggregation systems to supply larger urban areas with better prices and capacity and so on? And the way we're going about doing this is through using systems dynamics modeling, and I recognize some faces from the Learning Lab on Monday. And we have different data sources for the actual modeling, value chains analysis, household surveys, so on. But one of the key ways is actually kind of getting into the communities and speaking and working with stakeholders to help to design these models, and really having their buy-in and using their lived experience and knowledge of the system. So, group model building, as I kind of alluded to, is involving stakeholders in really the process of building a simulation model from its very design to the event evaluation, and really trying to draw upon their insights and their knowledge of the system to inform our own kind of perceptions of how the horticultural value chain may work or how the loop aggregation system may work. And the spatial element comes in because we are using a participatory geographical information systems tool. It's known as Layer Stack. In a sense, and it was created by one of our co-PIs, Carl Rich and Magda Rich. Essentially, it's a plastic wallet with a number of acetate sheets, which you can underlay a map of the region or of a location or of a cluster of markets. And you can work with stakeholders to essentially spatially bound or draw the different stocks of fruits and vegetables, different flows between markets and villages and markets and so on, and really begin to build the system in space and think about how it may change over time and so on. So we took these group model building meetings to two cities, to 2 districts in Bihar, Muzaffarpur and Ara. They're probably the 3rd and 4th cities behind Patna and Samastipur in Bihar. And critically, they have differences in their marketing kind of infrastructure in Muzaffar 4, you rarely find commission agents who link the farmer or the aggregator to the downstream traders. In Arrow, they are a key part of the value chain. You can't really avoid these commission agents. And each session was 2.5 to 3 hours long, and we'd provide a lunch, which they really enjoyed, and a small travel expense as well. And the participants, we had between 10 and 12 in every session. We tried to kind of to find participants along, or involve participants from along the value chain, but kind of inherently from our links with Digital Green, they tended to be upstream, kind of heavy producers and traders. And you'll notice that there are only men here, and it's something we're very conscious of. And myself and Bhavani and the rest of the team are currently discussing having women-only sessions. Are they facing particular barriers to accessing Loop and the value chain, and so on? So it's something we're conscious of, and we hope to really involve in our actual systems model. And the actual kind of facilitation team, usually a team of 3, myself as the lead modeler, Vinay Bai, who some of you will have met during the Learning Lab earlier this week, and then Eva Sashmitadi or Amitesh Bai, who would be kind of on-the-fly English or Hindi to English translation. And just to kind of give you an idea of the format of the data, over the next few slides, I have about 3.5 minutes left. So, using the spatial temporal data, one of the first things was kind of collecting spatial temporal data to see the tiny little blue dots here are some of the key markets supplied in Bhojpur. And then you can't read it, some of it's in Hindi, some of it's in English, is the kind of market infrastructures in terms of the seasonal numbers of traders and consumers and the retailers at these markets between the seasons, thank you, to be able to kind of get a demand schedule and a supply schedule, be able to give our model some of these numerical figures, working with the stakeholders. Also able to get some time series in terms of the perceptions of the farmers of differences in supply. So we see that supply to Kaim Nagar Mandi, KN, has been increasing at a substitute to Arra Mandi due to kind of a substitution effect where the farmers felt that in Arra Mandi there is a saturation of produce already. And this is helpful, again, for our parameterization of our formal kind of model. And again, this is kind of scribbles, but differences in transport costs between loop and non-loop, understanding differences in distances and the costs it may take to supply different mandis. This data, particularly for farmers that are not part of the loop program, this data is very hard to come by. And also about the different input sources, locations, where they find fertilizer and the costs and so on. It was then also important to try and to work with the stakeholders to build some of the structure of our model. We had some time series data, some spatial data, but also some of the relationships. And again, this is a scribble, some in English, some in Hindi, but it's showing the different proportions of flows of fruits and vegetables in a particular market downstream of commission agents, also in different seasons. So again, this is key numbers for us to be able to start to set up our systems model moving forward. Again, this is notes from the field, or working with the stakeholders. On the left-hand side, you don't have to read it, but it's kind of a small systems model of the different drivers of seasonal prices. And on the top right-hand corner, we have a tiny little daily time series of the prices and how they then vary with quality, the number of traders, and so on. I'm going to quickly skip through different time series as well, developed with the stakeholders about the number of traders, local, distance, and so on, you may expect to find in different mandis over time. And again, this is important for us to start to build the model. And also a diagram here, thank you, about how different drivers and causes which may lead to loop farmers, or farmers picking up loop or disadopting loop. I'm happy to field some questions on some of the details of this, of course. Some of the key challenges were transport costs. At the origin of this arrow, farmers were able to supply the markets in green at about 0.4 rupees per kg. But if they wanted to supply some of the markets with what they identified as low capacity, low diversity, they were having to pay 7 or 8 times higher. Insufficient capacity, some of these small rural huts, they're called, have daily capacities of about 1.5 tons, as opposed to some of the larger mandis that may take up to 100 tons per day. These may also form the kind of scenarios we run in the model. There's a lack of cold storage along the chain, which obviously discourages them sending fruit and vegetable to further away markets. Sorry, this is over a space of about 40, 50 kilometers. And I'm now out of time, so I will just quickly talk about the challenges. It was a super interesting, super informative way to help us to build the model, access some data which we weren't able to get from our survey, from our value chains analysis, working with the stakeholders. There were some internal power dynamics that the farmers tended to defer their answers to the aggregators, and it took some facilitation to kind of grow the farmers into the session. Also, just about the venue and so on and preparation. Finally, my job is now really to convert this into the systems dynamics model, kind of watch this space. Just wanted to introduce how we've been working with stakeholders. That went super quick for me. Summary, I'll leave it up. Thank you very much for listening.